A lot of people feel like, well, if they're not okay, I'm not okay. And that's a big sign of codependence as well.
Yeah.
Well, I can never be happy if they're unhappy. Well, no, actually you can be. And I think that's where we know there's a healthy, interdependence there, that you're like, I can be okay and hold space even when you're not okay.
Hi, welcome back. Today we are talking about codependence. Is there such thing as healthy codependence? I don't know. We're going to explore that. But first, we're drinking a mocktail today, an electrolyte refresher, because we all need more electrolytes. And I love this one because it's called Leisure Hydration. And this topic will naturally flow into burnout. So I thought this was like really good way to just have some leisure.
Perfect. I think we're depleted half the time. We don't even know. So water and hydration is good. Maybe it make for a good conversation today.
Plus we have clients after this. We don't want to be drinking wine yet.
Middle of the day.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Okay.
All right. So codependency, it's a word that's used a lot and frequent. And I wonder sometimes, I don't know about you, but when you hear words so much, you tune it out. So I thought it'd be really good for us to discuss what is codependency and how do people help to fix that pattern.
Yes. So it's basically, are you getting out of your lane? Have you ever felt responsible for someone else's emotions, choices, or outcomes, or felt like you have to control them, or felt like they're controlling yours? So it's sort of like this over-functioning for others and feeling emotionally responsible for other people's choices and feelings, when you really boil it down. And so we're going to talk about what is codependence versus, I'm just a caring friend, partner, parent, whatever. There is a line, and hopefully we're going to clarify that for you today. Yeah. So boundaries are not about controlling others. They're about managing yourself. That's the first takeaway.
Yeah. And, talking about the overfunctioning. So like one thing that I see a lot in therapy is people trying to fix others' emotions. So often people will be like, can I bring this person to therapy? What do I do to help my spouse with their problem, right? How do we change them? How do we fix them? So people are so focused on fixing. That might look like, hey, I'm helping, I want to support them, but they're sometimes finding themselves like carrying the load of trying to change someone else or trying to get them to do something that they're not ready to do. And they focus so much on like what behaviors versus like what their relationship is to the discomfort that they're experiencing in that relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So it's like an over fixing. I want to fix, you want to rescue. There's also chronic people pleasing. There's kind of like you might notice you feel anxious or upset when other people are upset. Over monitoring relationships, like hoping that they're okay, hoping they don't get upset or offended, feeling guilty if you say no, losing yourself in relationships. So when you really boil it down, there's also this fear of conflict. There's a fear of abandonment, fear of being selfish. And this comes up in therapy a lot, right? Where like we were just talking about this last week in our staff meeting about when people call for therapy and they're like, well, I don't really need the therapy. I'm only here to fix my partner or to fix my, sister. So I'm just going to come so that you can fix them. Well, that's not your lane. That doesn't belong to you. That's like a classic sign of codependence.
It's tough to recognize sometimes because I think that people are truly in distress and you want to help them, but there's a difference between supporting and having empathy and holding space or asking, can I support you versus trying to push, drag, or, take them in a certain direction, especially if they're like, heck no, right? And a lot of times it makes me think of, that speaker we went to see a couple of years ago, and she was always like, how dare you? She was a little crusty. I'm not going to mention her name, but she was like, how dare you interfere with someone else's journey? Let them have their journey. You don't know what their journey of healing is, or, perhaps based on faith or whatever it may be. And I think that resonated with me, because I think that people lose a lot of energy trying to push people. And we all know some people are not going to change until they're ready. You can give them all the information about how their stuff is affecting you, and you're here for support, but also like they have to take that ownership. And I know it's very hard when people don't, because that means that you're sitting with discomfort. And a lot of people feel like, well, if they're not okay, I'm not okay. And that's a big sign of codependence as well. Yeah. Well, I can never be happy if they're unhappy. Well, no, actually you can be. And I think that's where we know there's a healthy, interdependence there, that you're like, I can be okay and hold space even when you're not okay.
Yeah. And then I cannot be okay, and you can hold space for me. You don't have to be negatively impacted as well. So it's like thinking about it as like when we say stay in your lane, you have your lane, they have their lane, and then there's a third lane, which is like the universe's lane that you have absolutely no control over. It's like the universal God lane. So you can just release that one right there. But when you talk about your lane, you're talking about you're responsible for your behaviors, your reactions, your boundaries, your communication, your choices, and they are responsible for their feelings, their decisions, their consequences, their mistakes. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think we say often like what the underlying like causes are for that. I think in romantic relationships, some signs might be like you feel like you're losing your identity, right? Like that other person is what fills you. So if they're not happy or they're not doing a certain thing, you feel empty or anxious. Like love should be coming from within and not from the other person. You prioritize everyone else's needs before yours or your significant others. You kind of have a sense of, I don't know who I am anymore, or I'm doing things just for approval or to avoid something, so those are all signs of codependence and that loss of identity.
Yeah. Support is really staying next to someone and supporting them, and codependency is trying to carry them. It's not your job to carry people. That's another way to sort of like visualize it for yourself. And, where does this come from? We always talk about patterns and looking at the core root of where these things come from. So think about your childhood or people you're dealing with who might appear to be codependent. Oftentimes this originates when there's an adult child constantly trying to parent. There's a child who is constantly trying to parent their parents. Like that is one sign. Or a partner trying to prevent a spouse from making a mistake. Like watching this as a child, you can see this and then you kind of like replicate it. That's like one thing. I don't know if you've seen like kind of consistent patterns in childhood where these things come up in their adulthood.
Yeah, for sure. I think that one of the over-reliance where parents all the time not all the time, but some can't manage their own emotions, or they can't regulate. So, right, they overshare with the children, right? Or they're upset and the kids feel like, oh, I need to act a certain way so my parents won't be upset. So they're managing the parents' emotions. They learn from early on. And I think that's where you see that pattern, right, of the rescuer, especially, and the fixer, early on. So I think that's a big one.
We talked about this on our last podcast, actually, about therapy, where we're talking about parts. And when we talk about how we have overfunctioning protector parts that show up to help us survive. So this is actually a part that learned to overfunction in order to survive in their childhood, right? Somebody that has to be vigilant, taking care of people, parentified child, a parent who is maybe not as present. So these are some patterns I think that we've seen.
And then you mentioned the fear of conflict. So if I express my needs as a kid and that is put down or dismissed, or someone's being angry for me, again, that may show up in me just subduing those needs or people pleasing and saying yes to things that I don't want to do. That obligation, that feeling like, oh, I feel obligated to do this even though I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah. So like if you feel like you're trying to constantly convince somebody to change, monitoring people's moods, repeating advice over and over again, saving them from consequences, you're going to make a bad decision. like taking responsibility for other people's choices that are adults, you probably are being codependent, or they're being codependent
Yeah.
to
And
you.
people love codependency. Like, especially if you're the one listening. I've had several clients like every day, significant other, someone calls and I listen to them just about this issue over and over and over. And like, well, I gave them 84 different things to do, but they're not doing any of them. And I was like, oh my God, how much time and energy are you losing? And I'm like, you better off to just be like, I hear you, and validate. But I was like, you are spending all this energy and they're not even picking it up, but they're getting something out of that venting, right? This immediate emotional release, but it's not a healthy coping style.
Right. So the other thing I thought would be interesting to talk about is what boundaries are not, because one of the ways to treat codependence is with boundaries. But I think people, they mistake what boundaries are. And one of the things that has come up often in therapy is people saying, well, I'm going to ignore them and I'm going to punish them because they didn't listen to me. I'm putting up my boundary. Yeah. I'm like, that's not a boundary. That's punishment.
Yeah.
That's manipulation.
That is manipulation.
So like these kind of things that people do to like fix their codependence or to apply boundaries, like I'm going to be mean because I'm applying that boundary to make them behave a certain way. That's not healthy, a healthy way to manage codependence. So, what are healthy boundaries? Right? Like, how do we treat codependence? How do we set limits? And how do we say, I'm not engaging in this? I'm not going to engage in this, pattern of controlling what you do, or feeling guilty, or overcompensating, or overperforming. I mean, essentially, one of the things I think that impairs people from doing this is they say it's really uncomfortable to do this, to watch people suffer or watch people making a poor choice. And I say, well, it is more uncomfortable to always be controlling other people. Like you have to sit with the discomfort of not doing it and let them be uncomfortable. I said this to one of my clients last week, and it was like as if I told her like to go kill someone. She was like, what?
Yeah.
I can't let them be uncomfortable. That would be torture for me. It was like,
yeah,
that is codependence. Yeah.
I think most people struggle with that, with the level of like discomfort. That's a big part of therapy is, right, of being able to sit with your own discomfort and someone else's discomfort. And so you're right. I think a lot of it is about us often and not about them. I can share one example from my life that, especially since my husband doesn't listen to this. So, well, early on in our relationship, I don't know if anyone has a significant other that gets anxious when traveling. So, sometimes things don't go according to plan, and he would get very anxious and I would get very anxious with him. And I try to like reassure, and it wasn't working, right? Then I'd get annoyed because I'm like, just get over it already. I'm like, it's not that big of a deal, right? And then I like re-regulated to the middle, like where I was like, okay, like you said, this is his stuff. Nothing I'm doing is working anyway, so I'm going to stop. And I remember it is this feeling of like, again, holding a container where I stay grounded and I'm like, okay, and I'm supportive and I'm like, okay, yeah, I see that you're upset, and then he figure out how to work through it, right? And I think there was a reliance of wanting me to like work through it for him, which wasn't working anyway. And then obviously like we all evolved, that's no longer an issue, but it's almost like, we think we're doing a favor to people by fixing or helping, and we're actually not, because we're just reinforcing their patterns of reliance on others, to help them. So
yeah. And I had one client, it's a similar thing where they were complaining that their sister was spoiling their child and their adult child. And everything she was saying her sister was doing to this adult child, this person was doing to her sister. So basically, she's not letting her suffer consequences. She's not letting her learn. She's saving her, rescuing her, coming and like making everything easy for her. And I'm like, sounds like that's what you're doing for your sister. And it was, and she admitted it. But it's like it's so much easier for us to see it when others are doing it than when we're doing it, when we're engaging in this behavior. So just pause, and think about that. So So what are some healthy examples, like some things we can do in terms of boundaries, where I was saying not punishing, but saying, I'm not discussing this if yelling is going to begin, or I can support this. I can support you, but I can't solve this. And a big one is money. I think with boundaries and codependence is I can't lend you any more money, or like the guilt that comes with that. For some people, that's come up in therapy as well. It's like, well, that means I don't care about them. If I can afford it, I should be giving them more money. Like, that's a boundary, right? That's keeping someone dependent upon you because of the financial resources you're providing to them.
Mm-hmm. And I think, all in all, like, focusing on your responses versus theirs. And, that's what you can control. And like, sometimes I think when people are so codependent, if their significant other is off, they might ask, did I do something wrong? Like, should we cancel plans? Should I stay home? Versus just, hey, something is off. Let me know if you want to talk. I'm here. I'm available.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to force it, but just, I'm available.
Yeah. And discomfort isn't bad sometimes, right? Like, that's a sign of growth at times. So sitting with that.
Yeah, so setting limits for yourself, clarity about what you will do and won't do, like you said, an emotional separation. But that doesn't mean that people, their responses to that's going to be you're changing a dynamic. So actually, I remember the example I was telling you before with my husband. When I held back, he was like, you're just being like mean. Like, you're just hanging out. He does watch this one now. But he was like, why are you ignoring me? And I'm like, I'm not. I'm right here, like, I'm not ignoring you. But it felt like such a withdrawal because I wasn't engaging in a like emotional way in the way that I had before, which was not healthy. And so people will feel like you're being selfish, you're not helping me, or you're cutting me off. So, that's a thing that can happen.
Yeah, that's why one of the reasons why change is so difficult in relationships is because the other person will resist. They'll get upset. They'll accuse you of manipulating or changing or being mean because they're like, whoa, this is new. I don't know this feeling here. So it's easy to get pulled back into the old dynamics. It's a lot of work on both parties to stay in a new dynamic, right? And both have to do it. And if they're not, then it's a lot of that work falls on you. Yeah.
And even with the discomfort, I mean, healthy relationships will grow and heal and adjust, and others may not. And that, part of that is grieving a little bit of that separation, that this may not be the relationship. Because again, you can't control someone else's evolution, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think when we become healthier, often we are influencing the people around us without controlling, just by modeling.
Yeah. So if you are, listening to this and you're wondering, ask yourself when things are coming up, is this actually mine, or am I getting out of my lane? Am I helping, or am I trying to control? Like, what am I trying to avoid by doing this? What would happen if I just let this play out and I let the person handle it? What do I need right now? Like, what's coming up in me? So it's just like a lot of slowing down and self-exploration, like a lot of pausing and waiting before you give your advice or try to save. Just let the silence sit for a bit and sit with that. And just like saying, I trust you to handle this, right? That sounds hard. So what do you want to do about it? Just kind of like take a step back. I think that's like one piece of advice. It's like, how do we change? Like, we want to give you something that you can do if you are struggling with this, or in relationship with someone who's struggling with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just like thinking about your car analogy or the lane. I'm thinking about being like jumping into their car, grabbing the wheel, pushing their car, like it's just a good metaphor for that overfunctioning versus just be like, hi, I see you over there and I'm here and I'm with you and I support you, but I'm not going to get in that lane.
Yeah.
I love a good metaphor.
And so that people can say, I need help right now, and we can help them. And that's fine too. That's not codependent.
Right.
Right? Like with the situation with this client, I'm like, did they ask you for help?
Yeah.
They're like, no, nobody asked me for my help. I just chose to give it. So,
I mean, that's a huge one, especially with men, because they tend to be more fixers. I'm always just like, just ask the person in distress, what do you need from me right now?
Mm-hmm.
People will tell you often. They'll just be like, just listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I actually do need some advice. Great. And I think that's an important differentiation because we can provide support or resources and things if that's what they want.
Yeah. And that can be, like what you said, is love. Love
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you have to carry their life for them. Love can mean holding space, listening, being supportive, for them without carrying them, without controlling the outcome. Yeah. So this is really important because I think this is a really good segue for our next podcast. We're going to talk about burnout, specifically burnout among women, and how this is one of the things actually that really contributes to burnout. So we will leave it there, and hope you watch our next one where we're going to talk about burnout.
Yep. Thanks for joining in today.
Thank you.